What inspired you in your 20s to be buying property when, most 20-year-old dudes are getting pissed, going on holidays, I guess investing that capital elsewhere?
When you grow up and you see everyone else around you, parents, aunties, uncles, grandparents worked all the way up until like 65, 66, and you're like, I'm sure there's another way out. And so when I started thinking about that, I thought, what are my vehicles to get me there? And property popped up. And I was like, this makes sense. My brother and I were sort of going through the journey at the same time, so it was sort of good to share learnings with each other. I talk about how your 20s is the time you test everything out. So many people, all of my friends, they went down the path of, okay, this is the time I can build up my career. You spend 10 years in a career, now you're making decent coin. But what I always found the issue with that is that you're now stuck. Because if you now decide, I actually don't really like this, you're now gonna have to go from level 10 down to level 1 again. I didn't have any of that. It was just core principle, which is buy good assets, use debt and leverage, and you'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
Don't fall for, Ravi's got to buy his agency with 50 staff. Let me go get 50 staff. It's like, don't worry about that.
You don't want that.
You've got to have a really good purpose as to why you want to do it.
What inspired you in your 20s, 21, to be buying property when, most 20-year-old dudes are getting pissed, going on holidays, I guess investing that capital elsewhere?
I was fortunate. I probably went to one of those property conferences is what they like to call it back then. It was some old dude in the front just saying, you should buy 10 properties and you get to retire. And, when you grow up and you see everyone else around you, parents, aunties, uncles, grandparents worked all the way up until like 65, 66. And you're like, I'm sure there's another way out.
Yeah.
And so when I started thinking about that, I thought, what are my vehicles to get me there? And property popped up. And I was like, this makes sense. My brother and I were sort of going through the journey at the same time, so it was sort of good to share learnings with each other. But the main reason was, and it's probably not a great reason, but I'm glad I had something to motivate me, was I don't want to work forever, and I think property is going to allow me to exit that.
Yeah. And was that the first asset class, real estate, that you got into?
Yeah, I always knew about shares. It didn't really excite me. I didn't really know and understand as much because going through high school, I went to, doing year 11, year 12, I went through learning about what happened just post GFC.
Yeah.
So I graduated in 2010. So 2008, 2009 is all about how did the environment completely collapse?
Yeah.
And so that turned me off going, okay, I probably don't want to go there. And with real estate, it was just so core, which is shelter. So I thought, well, I'm sure people want to live here and Australia is the best place in the world, no bias. So I'm assuming people at some point are going to start migrating here. And that was why I chose real estate. I have gone into other asset classes since then, but I would always go back if I started again, foundation real estate.
Makes sense. How did you at that stage go through the process of carrying out research, just going through, I guess, all the buckets you've got to go through to kind of execute?
Well, it's so different now. When you're talking to someone and they're like 21 and they go, yeah, cool, I want to get started. There's so much available. Back then you didn't have podcasts.
Yep.
There was no, it was literally getting those property magazines. I used to subscribe to that. So that would come through every month and I'd be like, oh, what are the hot spots to buy in? And you later realize it's probably not the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it was a lot around just talking to people, whether it was real estate agents, talking to my brother, he would find books. I think it was just focusing on the core principles rather than, what's trending in the market. So I didn't really have as much in terms of resources to know what areas are popping, where's infrastructure being done and what's being spent by the government. I didn't have any of that. It was just core principle, which is buy good assets, use debt and leverage, and you'll eventually get there.
Yeah. How did it play out when you purchased that first one?
Yeah, it worked out really well. So I still hold that property.
Unreal.
Yeah, I bought it for 190,000 in Dubbo, and it's probably worth about 450, 500 now.
Nice.
And this is where it gets really weird because people think that, over 11, 12 years now I've held it, you're going to have heaps of tenancy issues. It's an older property. It's like a 1970s build. It's not a flash property at all. And I mean, bought it for 190K. What'd you expect? But over the last 11 years, I can probably count on one hand how many times I've had an issue there. And when I say an issue, it's probably the air conditioning or, just need paint. So it's not that hard, but it's so easy to get wrong.
And when you bought back then, what was the return like for you?
Memory wise, I think I was like, it was only renting maybe 220, 230 a week. And interest rates back then were actually very similar to where they are today. So we've sort of come full circle.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like a huge outlay from my pocket, but it was also not going to generate me enough cash flow to like retire in like a year.
Yeah.
You're talking small numbers.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's so hard when you get to the first one. You're like, okay, I'm supposed to do this like 10 more times to eventually get there. But you just got to trust the process.
Were you able to manufacture equity from that first one to go to the next one?
No, so because I purchased something that was quite cheap, I had enough of deposit to go my second one too.
Oh, nice.
So based on how they were settling, they basically settled at the same time. So the second one was like 255K. That was again regional New South Wales. And so I ended up buying the two over like 2 months. And then I said, okay, cool, I'm going to sit pretty and hope for the best now.
You must have been a good saver.
Well, yeah, I say this to people that I didn't work a single day, and I'm glad, during high school. So my parents said, look, being traditional Indians, they were like, cool, you got to do well at school so you can go to uni. I said, that's fair. So as long as I do well at school, you won't make me go work. And so I had nights where I could play COD and whatnot. And as soon as I finished high school, I had already started applying for work during my HSC period. And the day after my Year 12 formal, I was interviewing and ended up getting a job the week after that. So throughout uni, I was working full-time hours. I was doing full-time uni as well, but I realized that uni's pretty silly and there's a game to it. So throughout all of that time, if you're living at home and you're working full-time hours, you're going to get there pretty quickly.
100%. And so what did your 20s look like for work for you?
A bunch of different things. So when I talk about now, whether it's in the Retire Filthy Rich book or whether it's on YouTube, I talk about how your 20s is the time you test everything out.
Yeah.
So many people, all of my friends, they went down the path of, okay, this is the time I can build up my career. You spend 10 years in a career, now you're making decent coin. But what I always found the issue with that is that you're now stuck.
Yeah.
Because if you now decide, I actually don't really like this, you're now going to have to go from level 10 down to level 1 again. And by then, you've probably got a mortgage, you've probably got kids, maybe married, whatever. But your responsibilities are so much bigger. And so I thought, why don't I just give a red hot go at this? I can spend the next 5 to 10 years, try as many things as possible. And I'm guaranteeing that one of these things will stick because I'm going to like one of these things. And when I like something, I'll go balls deep in it and I'm going to make a shitload more money anyway.
I love it.
And I think there was one conversation that I had. So I was fortunate, did well at uni, got a graduate program straight into Mars Chocolate. So dream job. And I had a conversation with my manager at the time. So she was like the dream child when it came to her coming in as a graduate, working for 10 years. And she made it up as like a major manager at this company. And she said, look, if you do everything I say and I mentor you, you can be where I am right now. And I was like, cool. She thought it motivated me. I was so scared because she had just broken up with her partner because she was prioritizing work. It's been 10 years in this journey and she was making good money, like 150, 200, but she had no work-life balance. She had no assets next to her name. And I was like, I don't think I want to do this for 10 years only to end up there. So I had to look for alternatives.
So interesting. I had a similar experience, like when I was working corporate, where I didn't have a conversation with my direct report, but I was just observing like the people above me. And I was like, for what they earn and for how much they work, I was like, doesn't stack. Like that does not stack. And like, man, it didn't stack up to me. I'm like, there must be a different way to accumulate wealth and have a better life.
So you were in the corporate world. How long were you in there for?
3 years.
And then you decided to go start up your own thing?
Yeah, I was made redundant during the GFC.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But I was at like a public company, property funds management company, learnt a lot, but just that whole corporate grind, that whole political ladder, I just was just looking at it going, yeah, not me. Like no creativity. I was just like, nah. So it was a great lesson because I was like, this is not what I want.
Yep. And I think that's what your 20s should be.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're in systems and we create it for ourselves as well. People just follow the same trend, which is I'll go buy the nice car. Maybe I'll go get my place, whether it's a 1-bedroom unit in Sydney. Now you're locking yourself into going, I have less choice.
True.
So, as we're both property people and we talk about property all the time and we've been around people that do property all the time. But one of the worst things that I think people can do in their 20s is go, I'm going to go out there and purchase a unit because I get some first homeowner grants, and that's my way to get out of the home. And especially when you're coming from a traditional background, ethnic background, that was the only way you could move out before you get married. And so if that's what people are doing, chances are in your 20s, you're not going to try a bunch of things. You're not going to have the side hustle and give it a go for 6 months and make no income, because you have to make income in order to live.
Interesting perspective you got around the testing in the 20s. I mean, I haven't looked at it like that, and I tend to agree with what you're saying. It's like get in there and just try a lot of shit, see what sticks, and then you're right, because if you get stuck, let's say, in this corporate job at 22, and then at 31 you're like, my life sucks. Like you've got to reinvent yourself again.
100%.
And the world's changed.
Yeah. And I think now more than ever, like, you know, back then it was you work 5 days a week, go into the office, come home, and then whatever the internet looked like 5-10 years ago is what you were using.
Yes.
Now, most people are working like hybrid models. So you've got an extra couple of days. You don't have to travel back and forth to work. People have so much time. And, you know, I'm empathetic towards the fact that things have changed now. But if you really think about it, in your 20s now, you would make a killing because you have so much more time and you have so many more tools.
True.
And so, you know, it sort of makes me scratch my head when people go, oh, like, you know, I don't have enough money. I can't do this. I can't do that. And I'll try and educate the guys at work as well because we've got a young team. And I'm just like, you have a lot of time and I have you on Instagram and I know you're going out all the time. So let's be real here.
When you say they've got a lot of tools, like this younger generation, let's say the 20s to 30s, is that where you're referring to like leveraging distribution through like social channels to like commoditize and productize things?
Yeah, like I had a phone that didn't have a camera. You have like everyone's carrying iPhones now.
True.
So you can shoot content. They understand it so much more because they're consuming so much. It's just that they're not creating as much. And so I reckon if people did that for the next 6 months and actually stuck to it versus going out for that extra brunch on a Sunday, you might find yourself in a position where you've got a nice little side hustle going and now you're going, okay, maybe I want to stick to my 9-to-5 job, but at least I'm not killing my soul. I've got something as a creative outlet there.
True.
That ultimately in 5 years' time, maybe that becomes my main thing. But while I've got my income going, let me go and invest into assets so I have a choice in 10 years' time that I can go, okay, I don't need all that money because I invested well back then. I can now do stuff that I really like. And guess what? When you really like something, you're probably going to make a lot more.
That's right. And you'll stick at it. You'll persevere the more that you are, the more you care about it. So you left that job?
Yep. So I decided, okay, I need to get out. I need to get out. I need to do something else.
Yeah.
And throughout uni is probably when I tested the most. Like I was at some point, I worked at a funeral home doing marketing for them.
Interesting.
And ended up having to leave because I watched a horror movie and I freaked myself out. So I tried everything. And then when I got out of high school, out of uni, got into that job, and then I was like, okay, I've bought property. I've utilized the high income that I'm making. And at the time it was like 60, 65K, which was high. Yeah. And lending was a lot easier. So I ended up buying the properties and I was happy. And then I realized that in this process of buying property, I enjoyed it. What can I do out of these things? And I didn't want to become a real estate agent. I didn't like that side of the business. And I was like, there's mortgages, but I like my mortgage broker. Conveyancing. I didn't really like my conveyancer and it seems pretty boring, which means most people aren't going to touch it. And so I started going down that path. And so my mortgage broker at the time, who was just a mobile banker, he came to me and he goes, Ravi, I figured it out. You should become a conveyancer. You can run your own thing. You do a course for 6 weeks and you become a conveyancer. I was like, cool. Next day, resigned, signed up for the course, but the course wasn't 6 weeks. It was 2 years.
He got you there.
Yeah. And so I thought, okay, you know what? This is a blessing because now I'll work in a conveyancing firm. And it was a suburban firm. Tried to learn as much as I could for 2 years. And in that process of doing it, I realized I got so bored because it just wasn't me. I was looking more for how can I run my own business? And that was my calling from it. I started going down the path of promoting at nightclubs because I knew I could do that after hours. And now I can make dual income.
Conveyancing. Fuck. That seems like really monotonous work.
Especially when you're working with like other people in the organization that traditionally were really old. So like I had nothing in common with these guys. I could rock up to work and they were talking about, some were like talking about their grandkids. And I'm like, dude, I'm in my 20s.
Yeah.
I want to talk about like what's the new hotspot,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, in terms of going out. And so I think because I found it so boring, and it's changed a lot since then, but because I found it so boring, it caused me to think outside of the box and think, okay, I need to do this because I'm someone who needs to follow through. But while I'm doing this, I think there's alternatives out there. And so that's when I started going, okay, I can create content. I was traveling a bit, ended up going down the nightclub scene, DJing, running nightclub events. And then that's how I really learned how to create content.
Okay, interesting. So at what point then did you decide I might want to become a buyer's agent?
So ended up doing the conveyancing stuff. I was like, cool, got my license and whatever. I'm probably not going to do it.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm going to do this nightclub stuff full time for about 12 to 18 months because I think I'm pretty good at it. Started making more money than I've ever made. And I was like, cool, this is mad. Then I met my partner, who's now my wife, and she was working a full corporate job. So I was like, she's working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I work Friday to Sunday. I don't think this is sustainable. And so I thought I need to start pivoting. And then I went, okay, I can now learn how mortgages work. I've been through mortgage brokers before, bought property. So I decided to go down that path. And while I was doing that, I came across an ad that you had put up.
Okay.
And it was just a random Facebook ad. And I think it was pretty early days for yourself. And I was like, I didn't even know what a buyer's agent was. And so
Okay.
I knew of some other buyer's agents that helped with research, but they didn't make enough of an impact for me to even remember that. Yeah. And so when you sort of broke down, there was this concept of a buyer's agent. It was the opposite of a real estate agent. That's what made me realize I was like, oh, that's what I wanted to do. Because people around me already coming to me saying, hey, I want your help. You've built a portfolio. How do you do it? And I was like, well, I can't do that as a real estate agent. It would be, counterintuitive trying to sell a house and trying to get you to buy. And so I realized, okay, the conveyancing helps to understand contracts. The mortgage broking helps me understand lending. If I go down this path, it means I can directly help people research and find the right properties because I've been doing it for like 8-9 years. I now know a lot more than any of my friends. I'm pretty sure there's something here.
Fascinating, man. You did test a lot of shit. You really did. So were you DJing when you were in the nightclubs or were you doing market?
So it sort of like one thing led to another. So, and I'm starting to see patterns in how I operate. So I get in there and I'm like, I'm just going to promote. So people would use a guest list. Ravi's guest list used to work at one nightclub, so Argyle. I was like, cool, this works. So I'll go do Ivy, Establishment, Trill, and then there was a couple of others. And so I'm like, okay, now I've got a network of clubs that I now promote at, I have guest lists at, and then the money starts racking up. And then that conversation leads to the guy running the event. And I've gone, you make like 10 times what I make and I'm doing all the legwork. I'm going to go host my own. So I started hosting my own. And then I was like, okay, this is good money. Then I realized I had key man risk, which was the DJ I used. If he didn't rock up, I don't have an event. So I was like, as a backup, I should probably learn how to DJ. So I started taking DJ courses in the background. Then became a DJ and now I've got leverage because he started asking for more money and I was like, well, I'll just do it myself.
So sick.
And then I started hosting the event, DJing the event, and then I'd just have staff to help me like actually operate, the nightclub and the tickets. And that's what I was doing. And then I decided, well, if I'm making this much, but it's only one night a week and maybe I'm only hosting one event every 2 to 3 weeks, there's like a bunch of weddings that happen. So let me go disrupt that market. And so I went into weddings and I was like, doing 6, sometimes 7 gigs every week.
Unreal.
And so that's what I was doing before I got into the whole scene.
Were you doing the Indian weddings?
Yeah.
Because they're big.
Correct.
I've been to a few of those.
Yep.
They're sick.
And the unique selling point I had was I knew what was trending in the Indian scene, but I also was in nightclubs all the time. So I knew what was working with these young kids that wanted to have the mix between them. So you had Indian DJs that would just play Indian music, and then you'd have others that would play non-Indian music. So I was like, if I can bring both together, I'm going to end up making a lot because I'm the only one that can do it.
Yeah.
And so there was like a handful of people that were doing DJing at the time, but I was able to navigate through that pretty quickly.
It's incredible how the dots have connected for you. So like you've, like how it's all like just, I guess how it all supports what you're doing now. Like in terms of even when you started out as a buyer's agent, right? Like how even the conveyancing, the mortgage broking, even just working, in that corporate job. I guess the nightclubs, like sales, marketing, creating, and then like how it's propelled you to like get into what you're doing now. It's fascinating how that all kind of just boom, 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 and then home run.
Well, that's the whole point of testing things. And that's why I'm so passionate about people going down that path. Because I'm like, the worst case is that you're going to do something you don't like, but you're going to build your skills, your toolbox, and they're going to become the foundation for everything you do. So I used to have a YouTube channel where I would, create content around nightclubs and me traveling overseas for weddings and doing all of that stuff. It never became a thing.
Yeah.
But I learned how to use a camera and I learned how to edit and how to upload on YouTube. So as soon as I decided I wanted to make content about stuff I absolutely love, which was numbers and property, I used to do that in my like spare time. I'd sit on Excel and play around.
Got it.
Now I'm like, if I can now match the content side, which I know no one else is doing at the time, if I can do that with something that's boring like real estate and no one's doing it well in Australia, I think there might be something here. Because if I want to learn from YouTube videos, I'm pretty sure someone else does too.
Yeah. So you saw the ad, you joined BAI and then you became a buyer's agent. You started Search Property.
Yep.
And then you simultaneously launched your YouTube channel?
Correct. So if we're looking at timelines, we're talking 2019. I've come across your video, realized I need to get a real estate license. So I went and got that.
Yeah.
And at the time, like I was getting gigs around the world for like DJing weddings. So I thought, okay, you know what? I'll still do this for about a year and a half. And then I'll transition into the buyer's agency stuff, or I can do it part-time. And then we have the pandemic hit. Everything gets cancelled. And I'm like, cool, that's my hard stop.
Wow.
And I go straight into making YouTube videos and launched Search Property. And you can imagine for the first 6 months, nothing really happened. No one was watching my videos. I used to have Instagram Live that I used to do, and I'd have 2 people rock up. And I was like, cool, just spent an hour on a Monday night talking about the market and whatever, and there was 2 people. And I'm pretty sure one of them was my best friend.
Yeah. But, what's so fascinating about what you're sharing is that, when people look at content creators like you who've done really well online, they think it's so easy. But like when I hear about Mr. Beast, who was posting for 5 years and no one was paying attention, and, everyone looks at him now, and just what you're sharing, like 6 months. I guess, what was the turning point though? So 6 months, you're not getting a lot of engagement, not like, do you know that, like, have you got the specificity around like what changed?
I think there was 2 things. One, I started taking it more seriously.
Okay.
So I was, everyone thinks at the time, like right now, we probably think in our own personal lives, we're really busy. But every time you've thought that and you look back, 5 years from now and you look back and you're like, man, I had a lot of time compared to what I have now. And that was what I was going through at the time. I was like, oh, I'm really busy. The pandemic's in. I'm like, mental health and whatnot. I just need to go for walks. And my partner, we had moved in at the same time. Everything happened at the same time. So Feb, I launched the YouTube channel and Search Property. March, my parents split up, so I have to move out of home. I move in with my partner a month later and pandemic kicks in. So like everything happens at the same time. And I thought either I use everything that I've got in terms of resiliency and everything I've learned over the last 8 years and I can make something of this, or this just becomes another year and in 3 years' time, I'm going to be exactly where I am, if not further behind. And so obviously I took the right approach and it worked out for me, but I can see how a lot of people would fall off from there. But it was during that time that I go, okay, I need to start taking this seriously. So 6 months in, partner's gone, you should take this seriously. Even if you're getting 10 people, that's still 10 people that could potentially use your service. And I thought, okay, well, that's a good way to look at it. And if you had 10 people in a room right now, that's pretty impressive. And I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty impressive. And so I doubled down on YouTube, and that was my main place to post content. I also had a lot of economists like sort of shout me out, but for the wrong reasons, because I was like loud about how I don't think the market's going to crash. I think it's going to go up. And they were like, you don't know what you're talking about. You've been here for 2 days. And I was like, cool, but I've been sort of investing for like 8 or 9 years and like researching, but I get it. And then I think it was just building upon that. So 1 call became 2 calls, and I used to run all the calls myself. I used to run free strategy sessions for people and just give. And it was a different time as well. Like there's not as many buyers agents back then as there are now. So it was a different landscape too.
So for anyone listening to this now who, let's say they're not on YouTube, so I know that was your platform you've annihilated. They want to get started. Like, what are some things they need to just be aware of in order to like win long term?
I think it's, for me, what I did was different to what was working at the time. Everyone I saw that was like, competitors or, people already operating in the system, they were all posting ads on Meta. And so they used ads to get clients, and I'm sure it works. And so for me, I realized that I could play in the same environment, but I'm just going to get pigeonholed into being just another one of these guys that pop up with ads. And I think that's sort of what's happening at the moment, where people are sort of going, okay, well, that's worked for that person. Let me go do that.
Yeah.
I think where the unique part is you got to figure out what's good for you. So for instance, you might be a really good communicator, really good at conversations. You're probably better off doing a podcast versus doing written content. Same thing goes for video, because, and I've realized this over time, is that I maybe take it for granted that I can, pop on the camera and talk about stuff and it's, I can do video well, but it's been years and years of doing it.
Yeah.
People now, if they're starting out thinking, oh, well, it's worked for Ravi on YouTube, let me go do the same thing. Like, the content could be the exact same, but the delivery, the communication style, the personality, that's going to be completely different. So I don't think you should approach it saying, this is what worked for this person, this is what I'm going to do. I would take a long, hard look and say, be self-aware and see where do you want to spend your time and go deep into that, even if no one else has been doing it.
Great fucking advice. That's really good advice. You're right. Because someone who thinks I want to start a YouTube channel, they might be awesome at writing. They don't like the camera. So maybe like X or LinkedIn or something's going to serve them better. Such a good point.
I've seen some, like, whether it's mortgage brokers, buyer's agents or whatever, they've gone down LinkedIn. And I can see that they're growing their business off the back of that being their main thing. I've seen others do it on Instagram or, TikTok. And I've never been really good at those platforms. I try, but I'm not as good on that as I am. Give me 10 minutes on the camera and I love talking about this stuff and it'll flow. And so I think people just got to go, I don't need to be everywhere. Pick what your niche is and stay in your own lane. Because that's another whole journey with this is, whether it's the buyer's agency space or the mortgage space or, your own job and portfolio building, I think people just need to know what's in line for their goals.
Yeah.
Who cares if someone has $50 million in real estate? It doesn't affect you day to day.
True.
You may not need that.
It's true. And so, interesting. So with YouTube, what does your audience look like? Do you know what it looks like?
Yeah. Audience is 90%, I think it's 89% for technicality, 89% Australians.
Yeah.
And majority of them 25 to 34.
What are they typically struggling with?
I think there's too much information at the moment. So when we're jumping on calls, when people are calling in for the agency, they're like, well, this person said this is the strategy, and you guys are saying it's this. Like, what should it be? And I'm like, well, it could be that now, and it could be this in 3 years' time. And I think that people are struggling with, I'm in a job that I may not like. Now I'm looking for escape, but I should have done this 10 years ago. And so they've now starting to play what's called the revenge trade. And so what they do is they try and make back the money they've technically lost or opportunity cost. And that's when they get wrecked. So you see so many people go, well, Ravi, I can renovate the house and then I can flip it into this and then I'll play a little bit in crypto and then I'll go into meme coins and then I'll come back into real estate and I can 10x my value in like 2 years. And I'm like, it's not how it works. And that's usually the shortcut to like getting absolutely wrecked. So I think that's what people are struggling with is there's too much information and it's conflicting. And now it's like, okay, I don't think I'm going to do anything because it's too hard.
Or they do the revenge trade.
Or they do that. Yeah, that's even worse.
I haven't heard that term before.
It's like a crypto thing.
Crypto thing.
Yeah.
When did you first get into crypto?
2018. So 2017 Christmas, my brother tells me about crypto because it was absolutely popping off. I get in 2018, open up a CoinSpot account. And it's funny because I look back at that and I was buying $20 a day, right? And I was like, oh, $20 a day. At the time, felt like a huge amount. And I think 6 months later, the market completely crashes. And I only invested in altcoins because I was like, Bitcoin's too expensive. I want to make the 10x overnight. So I had a bit of that mentality, but I still knew my foundation was sorted because I had property. And then I realized, okay, I need to look deeper into this because you have something like this. It could be the tech bubble, right? But out of the tech bubble, you still had companies that made sense. And so at that time, I decided to take out my super because I had like 20 odd K in super. I took it out, put it into an SMSF and bought crypto with it. So I was like, well, if I'm going in, I'm never going to touch my super anyway. And to be honest, if I rely on my super, I probably haven't done what I'm supposed to do outside of super.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is house money now. And if it turns out to be what everyone tells me it's going to be, well, then I'm going to be sitting pretty in retirement anyway. And that's the initial part of my journey in crypto.
Did you throw that 20 into Bitcoin?
No, it was half was in Bitcoin and the others were like a bunch of this and that. So at the peak of the cycle, I think the following cycle, because I decided I was going to sell. And so I went from 20K in the peak of the last cycle was at about 300K. And I was like, there is no way I was going to ever make that with anything else.
100%.
So that's how I got the bug, I suppose.
Wow. So 17 is when you first came across.
2017.
Yeah, so did I. And I like.
What was your journey with it?
So a friend of mine was telling me in 17 that like it's everything's about crypto, especially Bitcoin. And I think it was $5,000 then from memory, 4,000 or 5,000 Aussie. I think so. And I was like, fuck, that's expensive. Like I was just like, and then like I told you before we got started, like up until like 4 months ago, I'd never spent more than a minute like researching crypto. I just indoctrinated in property, and I have just been in a mindset. It's a limited mindset that is outside of building a business. That's the best place to build wealth, and that's just a fixed mindset that I've carried. So I had to kind of like unwind my belief systems and learn and get curious and study and just kind of look into it all. And like I told you, come to a conclusion that property returns where I'm at this stage of my life don't excite me anymore.
Yep.
There's some phenomenal property returns that I've seen and I've also done myself, but like it's kind of abnormal. And I just feel like Bitcoin just outperforms every other asset class if you look over the last like 13 years.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that investing strategy and risk appetite.
Yeah.
And for me, it's probably been the last 2 to 3 years where I've gone away from, I'm going to get the altcoin and then that's going to do a 5x and then I can pay down my debt and buy more property. It's gone from that mentality to going, I will still buy property and it'll still be part of the investing strategy, but I now have an allocation that goes towards Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I have no care in the world how much it costs because it's still cheap relative to where I think it will be in 10 years' time. But it's so weird, even with creating content around personal finance and I cover off things like crypto, those videos perform really poorly on my channel. And it's because as soon as I make a video around Bitcoin, it's like, I don't want to learn that.
Interesting.
Because everyone wants property. And here in Australia, like that's a big thing. And so I've realized over time that even if I was to make those sort of videos, and it's developing, but like if I make those types of videos, I'm like urging people in the start, like, hey, I know you're a property guy and I know you want to build wealth in stuff that you can touch and feel, but just keep an open mind because it might be this video that gets you to start thinking about it, because I'm glad that I came across it the way I did.
Yeah.
And again, to your point, like it may not even perform the way it does over the last 5 years in the next 5 years, but to me, I look at it as an insurance policy. The asymmetric bet that I can put in there versus getting another 10, 20, $30 million in real estate doesn't really change my life and doesn't move the needle, because the property, the way I look at it, is going to take care of my life and my core circle, so my parents and whatnot, my brother. If Bitcoin ends up doing what it needs to do, that's going to take care of my next generation.
Yes.
And so that's how I've sort of thought about it. Is that how you think about it?
Yeah. When you forward think 10 years, like just let's talk about Bitcoin specifically, like where do you think it's going?
Much higher than where it is today. But I think if it plays out to even 50% of what people have said, I think it's about not so much the price, it's how much does it take away from the traditional system.
And what's your viewpoint on that in terms of like how much do you think it's going to become a lot more dominant?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think the fact that what are your asset classes right now? You can go down property.
Yeah. You
go down shares.
Yeah.
And you go down crypto, right? Bitcoin. And so the way I see it is the real estate is land, and no one's going to take, well, one wouldn't think that no one's going to take your land, right?
Yeah.
The government could take it, but everyone needs to live somewhere. So to me, that becomes the foundation.
Yeah.
And people go, okay, well, I can use leverage and I can, grow wealth that way. Great. So then I've got an option between the extra amount that I have, but I can't buy enough to buy a property. I don't have enough to buy a property, or I don't have, borrowing to buy a property. Do I go down shares? So I'm investing into companies that I think a lot of them won't exist in the next 10 years because you've got things like AI, and that's completely killing off the SaaS business environment. So I'm putting money into companies that I have no idea will exist. Or I can go, if I've got that extra amount, maybe don't go down the alt side and the memes and all of that because you'll probably get wrecked.
Yeah.
But if I'm going into hard asset like Bitcoin and it turns out to be digital gold, well, that's a lot of the similarities around when gold came in and then the ETF came around versus what's happening right now is playing out. And I don't know who wouldn't want to have bought gold like 20 years ago.
Getting back to your earlier comment about if you posted on your, I'm assuming your YouTube channel, content pertaining about Bitcoin, it doesn't get as much views as property. I'm surprised. Hey, like I just assumed, and maybe it's my ignorance, I just would have thought these 20 to 30-year-olds, like they're frothing over crypto. Like it's more like, it's kind of, they're more seen as like a get rich quick. They can accumulate more wealth quicker. Like,
well, then I think it comes down to the type of content I make. So if I'm talking about crypto, it's not so much, hey guys, buy here in Jan of 2025 and sell in March of 2025 and you can make $3,000 trading crypto. That hits the dopamine and gets people going, okay, I can get out of my situation real quick. I'm talking about it the boring way.
Yeah.
Stack it, compound. At some point, I believe you're going to be able to borrow against your Bitcoin. You're going to be able to take that money out. And if you want to pay down your home loan, you could do that. You're probably going to get better interest rates as well on it. When I talk about it like that, no one wants to listen to that. So when I talk about Bitcoin and I talk about real estate, I'm talking about it long term. And I think that crowd, that's the younger crowd, early 20s, a majority of them are looking for the quick win. Yeah. So they'll go to TikTok for these are my five picks that I need to get, buy whatever I can, and then hopefully I can flip it for a profit, and they have no idea how taxes work.
Have you seen that like infographic with like 20 years ago to buy a house was like,
oh yes.
Isn't that amazing with the Bitcoin? And it just shows you like that was a really good visual representation that I looked at and I was like, I get that.
Can you speak to it? Because people...
Sorry, I was going to... Yes. So basically what it was, I think it was like 20 years ago, I think it was in the US, and it was like you can buy a home for like, let's call it like 150,000, which was like, let's call it like $1 million Bitcoin. And then now to buy a home, like with inflation, let's call it like 600,000, and that's like 10 Bitcoin.
Yep.
And I was just like, wow, like that is where it's going.
There was a concept I heard, it was on another podcast somewhere, and they said that because you have so much right now around housing is unaffordable in Australia, right? So this one line really hit home. They said, housing in Australia is not unaffordable, and it's not that the prices have gone up so, unsustainably. It's because you're measuring it in a currency that's losing its value even faster. So if you think about the currency being the fiat currency, it's debasing so quickly, especially when you have the pandemic and so much money comes into the system. But if you compared that to Bitcoin, the price of those homes are actually cheaper if you were in Bitcoin. And so that's what I think is happening, where there's a little bit of old school meets new school. And I think a lot of that changes in the next 5 years, where people go from, and I can see it's maturing a lot. Even from my journey, I've gone from, I want to make money and I'll be in alts, to now I understand why Bitcoin exists.
Yeah.
I think people go through that journey. And I think in the next 5 years, we're going to realize, if governments are buying this, why am I so limited in my beliefs that I think I'm better than the governments and I'm better than all these big companies and all these rich people and smart people that are going, this is the next thing. I'm going to go up against them because that's what you're betting against. That to me doesn't make sense.
When I got in was just before Trump got in.
Okay.
So I literally looked at the administration and thought, these guys are very pro, and if they get in, it's going to be great. And I took a punt. I said, I just think he's going to get in. That's when I invested my first round, and I went pretty heavy the first round, taking that punt. But I do believe that over the next 4 years, just with David Sachs and those guys that are there, that there's going to be a lot of like positive change towards, especially Bitcoin. And I just think that for someone not to see that and understand that, it's foolish.
for young people, especially, and this is how I learn, I'd love to know your thoughts as well, is I'm the type of person that needs to put something in, so I'm invested into it to learn.
I'm the same.
So if I attend a free event, I might not even attend. But if I paid for a ticket, I'm going there and I'm making notes because you're invested into it. And so that's how I learned about shares. That's how I learned about property. And that's how I learned about crypto. And so I think for people, if they're going to put money towards their own, own education, they're going to be invested in themselves. And so I think that's the part that, because there's so much free information out there, we're sort of like, oh, I'll watch this podcast and I'll watch this and then I'll get an audiobook and it's for free. And you're like, okay, well, what'd you get from it?
Yeah.
I can say I read a book, but you read the book, you didn't study the book. And I think there's a big difference between the two.
You mentioned earlier around like just a lot of information, abundant of information, being like overwhelmed. How do you discern? So like you want to like get into, let's say, shares or crypto or property. There's all these experts, all these podcasts. There's so much information. Like, how do you go about trying to make some smart decisions around like who to listen to?
I think you got to find someone that first you can bear listening to, because that's hard.
True.
Like, I remember when it was early days YouTube and I was starting to like, oh, there's people making videos about this. And it was just some old dudes. And I'm like, I can't relate to you. You're telling me to buy blue chip properties and that was the only way to do it. And it was in Sydney. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense when it was like 400K for a house. But now 400 doesn't even get me a unit. And I don't believe in that, especially if it all looks the same. So I think first you got to find someone you can relate to. Second part, listen to. Third part is go, okay, this person is where I want to go.
Yeah.
And I think then you go, I need to spend some time with it. If I've seen a random clip or a random YouTube video, and I'll know who's just randomly come across my content because the comment section will tell me. So if they come in and be like, why is this guy talking about this, and he's like, he doesn't have any runs on the board. You're like, okay, you haven't sort of been listening for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And there's probably some other issues there for you to go out and negatively comment. But I think that's probably a good place to start, is who aligns with where I want to be and can I actually listen to them? And there might be like maybe a handful, like 2 or 3. And then you got to figure out, okay, that strategy worked for that person at that time. Does it work for me? So for instance, if I came out here and said, okay, well, you should go out and buy 200K properties. They're going to be like, well, unrelatable. You did it when you started, but unless your strategy is fluid and doesn't adapt to the times, I don't want to listen to you. And so the same thing is happening now, which I think is going to be the next, space or stuff that I've always made it a personal finance channel, because I think the modern day investor wants to know about multiple things. They don't want to just know, oh, I can get rich in property, so I go to this, my property guy. I think I can be that person for people, whether it comes to Bitcoin, crypto, real estate, other personal finance stuff. That's why it's branded that way. And it's not like, learn property with Ravi.
So that diversification, when you started the channel, you said simultaneously when you started, I think 2017 you said?
The channel,
No.
2020.
2020. That was when you started Search Property.
Yep.
Were you thinking like that then? Like, hey, I want to give options to these people and that's like a part of the strategy? Or was that just because you're like, hey, this is what I know?
I went down real estate because I was like, a lot of people that are my age should be building a foundation in real estate, because that's how I did it. And I knew that really well. And back then you could still get property for 250, 300. So I was like, this is still viable.
Yeah.
And now we're getting into a point where with lending conditions where they're at, it might not be possible for you to get to your second or third property straight away. So for me, I'm like, I'm better off telling people that, yes, this is the way to do it with real estate. And this is the strategy, this is the tactics you can use, and we can help you do it. But outside of that, what are you going to do for 12 months? You might not be able to borrow again. So if you're not learning the principles day in, day out, which you should be, around how do I save? What are my mindset hacks? What am I doing for work? Can I get the side hustle? If I'm not doing those things, then it means in 12 months' time, you're going to go, oh, well, I've got a property, it's grown, but I haven't done anything with it. And that's probably the key difference between those people who compound and go move from 0 to 5 properties versus I've got one, I'm cool, tick box. You know what I mean?
So the clientele for Search Property, are they typically employees?
Yep.
Typically.
So I would say probably about 80% are going to be pay-as-you-go employees working normal jobs.
Yep.
And for them, their main, I guess, goal is, I said to myself I was going to get into property, but I tried to do the research myself. I've been watching your videos for a couple of years, and I thought, I don't need to hire you. I can do it myself.
Yeah.
2 years later or 6 months later, they've gone, the market's moved. I tried it. It didn't work. I think I'm just going to outsource it to you so I can focus on my own job. And that's sort of what I'm saying to people is you may like your 9 to 5 now, but there's no guarantee you'll like it in 2 years' time. So 1, start putting that money towards assets. And number 2 is get really good at your job and have the right skill set to be able to pivot or have leverage when you go to your next performance review and go, I need more money or I'm going to move somewhere else. If you don't do those things, you're going to get stuck.
When I asked you the question around like what are the people struggling with on your audience for the YouTube channel, it's interesting, like I'm assuming the people who come to you for your buyer's agency, even though there's all these platforms out there now that the public can access to get research information, there's just still such an abundance of information, difference of opinions, experts everywhere. Like it's so overwhelming. But then you've also got to execute because then there's the buyer. Let's say you choose Bundaberg. You then have to buy the property, and you're probably up against 20 buyers agents, and it's hard. Like I empathise with people who are out there trying to buy. Like it's especially regional. It's fucking tough.
Oh, I had it good back in the day.
Yeah, you had it good.
No one even heard about these places, and I literally could go there. They'll show me 7 properties. I could wait 2 weeks and then put in an offer, and even then I'd probably hear a week later. So it was very different back then, and you nailed it. It's not a choice of going, oh, maybe it'll be a nice to have a buyer's agent. It's like now you're almost like not going to get a property if you don't have one, because there's a bunch of others that are competing with each other, and we compete with a lot ourselves, and we lose to them sometimes if they're willing to pay more or their clauses are different. But I'm like, man, if I was doing this for the first time ever, or I'm a seasoned investor and I've gone, I'm coming into the market, how do you compete?
It's a jungle. And I think like what they obviously don't understand is that these relationships you've got with the agents, because you're buying from them so much, like they're going to go with you versus the average buyer. And I think it just must be buyers must be finding it pretty tough at the moment.
It would be so demotivating, and I think that's where even with the YouTube channel, I get a lot of feedback, but we also have so many calls coming in. We have those conversations with people and they're like, I tried this. I did a course or I did my own learning and I tried to do it myself and it's actually difficult. And I don't think it gets easier. I think the landscape will change, especially if we have some sort of a correction and you'll see who the good operators are, because I don't think everyone's a good operator. I think we're in like sort of the gold rush with, buyers agents, sales agents. We saw it in 2016, 17 in Sydney real estate with sales agents.
That's true.
It was literally, they would be like walking around and then they could hardly, put a sentence together and they were selling property. And I was like, I remember at the time I said, I should become a real estate agent. This job looks so easy. And I think we're going to have a bit of a landscape shift where it looks easy, but as soon as we have any turbulence from just a organization, you've run a business before, you've got wages to pay. So you're going to find out real quick who's actually saved money in the business or who've used the money to go and buy their own properties.
Yeah.
You're going to realize that very quickly. And we're going through a period where we've scaled up very quickly. We've got more roles that we're hiring for. We're very selective. But a lot of these people are now coming from other buyers agents. And some of the horror stories you hear, and I'm like, man, times aren't even that tough. And you're telling me you haven't been paid for 3 months.
Wow.
Or your super hasn't been paid. I'm like, that's not right. So when times get tough, you're going to realize that, okay, the cream rises to the top and the good operators will stay. But I think a lot of people will struggle, especially if they've scaled up too quickly and they don't have the right principles of how to run a business.
Yes. So let's talk about like market correction. So like, I want to get your view because I wasn't running a buyer's agency during this time, but when rates went up 13 times over that, was it 2022, 2023?
Yeah, it was crazy.
There was a period during then when it was climbing, when number 6, I was like, fuck, some of these investor buyers agents, sub 700, I was thinking, wow, there's shit's not going to go well here. I thought it was going to be really difficult, but it proved to be the complete opposite, where I was just like, oh my God, some of these buyers agents, they're so busy. what is going on? And it just kept going and go. And so I guess where I got to at the end of that, I was like, okay, rates went up that high consecutively. Now they're on the way down. Surely the market's now going to start to rally because like the sentiment's going to improve. The belt's going to loosen a bit. And I'm like, if it was so busy back then when it was climbing, like what is actually going to happen on the way down? And so like I'm just kind of anticipating like what's going to happen. Like where do you sit?
I think about this a lot, obviously.
Yeah.
We've got almost 50 full-time staff, so I've got to think about it. And I've come to the conclusion that with the next part of this, or whatever the correction will look like, you're right. Interest rates go down. We're seeing it already. The demand's increased. I think the issue is going to be for a lot of the buyer's agents will be people now know what a buyer's agent is and they want to hire one. Now it's now a choice of going, do I pick this one or this one? It's not a choice of what it was a couple of years ago, which was, I don't know what you are, educate me and why I should spend X amount. So now it's just picking between who I want on my side. But what's going to happen, and it's happening right now, is some of these, even these bigger players that are in the space, they are struggling on the sourcing side.
Yep.
So they can't find enough properties. So now what you have, and you have these clients come to us and they're like, hey, well, we've been waiting 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. We don't have a property. And that's 2 months in a hot market. I was better off just doing the research myself and trying it myself versus paying and being locked into something. Whereas for us, we've got, you know, I'm going to say one of the best sourcing teams. We do about 25 to 30 deals a week. And we've got people trying to poach them, which makes sense because they keep losing out to deals from them.
Got it.
So I think what's going to happen is I don't think the issue is going to be from the front end of finding clients. I think it's going to be about how you source property. And because we're seeing less and less being listed, those conversations are happening off market.
I want to get your viewpoint on where you think the market is going to go because interest rates obviously went up a shitload of times and the market started to rally and it really peaked and now rates are obviously on its way down. I just want to get your perspective on where you think things are going.
Yeah, well, I guess it's twofold. So the market and then where it sits for like buyers agents, real estate agents as a whole. I think the market has so much more demand coming in purely because just one small rate cut has meant the sentiment's changed. And so a lot more people are going, okay, now I'm comfortable getting into the market. I was sitting on the sidelines because I thought interest rates will continue higher. Now I think they're on the way down. Everyone's talking about it. I can get in. So you've got more demand coming in. And I think from a buyer's agency perspective or a real estate agency perspective, people want to buy, right? They want to get in and they want to get their hands onto it. So I think now the conversation for clients has gone from a couple of years ago, what is a buyer's agent?
Yeah.
Why should I spend X amount? To now I'm just competing, figuring out who I align with better because I'm definitely using one. The problem that we're going to see off the back of that is the sourcing part of it. Because if we've got not enough homes being built and we're going for established stock because that makes the most sense for returns, in a lot of these areas, there's not much stock left. And when you see listing and transaction volume online, at least, dropping in a lot of these areas, a lot of the conversations are now having off market. And at some point, they're just not going to happen at all because no one's going to want to sell. They've got their homes. Incoming demand is going to kick in. And I think from a business point of view, I think leads and buyer demand is going to be the least of people's problems. It's going to be sourcing. And we know that. I mean, you've spoken to a lot of other people as well. And sourcing is your main hub. As a buyer's agent, that's your unique selling point. Correct. You can find deals without compromising. So I think the market does definitely go up from here. How long and for how much of a move? I think we've still got probably another 18 to 24 months of it going up. But I think it's going to go up beyond what people expect because that's what happens in bubbles. If we're truly going to see a correction, it has to go above what people think is reasonable.
Okay.
And so you never get a market crash, and this is why I was so confident in 2020, is you don't get market crashes when consumer sentiment's at its lowest. You get it when it's at its highest because that's the most greedy. We're not there yet.
So you being a founder of a buyer's agency, talking about some of these points you're mentioning around, I guess, limitation to buying property just due to like what's available, how does that impact like growth for like you or other buyers agencies looking to scale when you just simply maybe just won't be able to buy the properties?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's tough. If you can't produce the one service that people are signing up for, and most people get paid upon settlement. So from a cash flow perspective, you might be all right from a deposit or retainer perspective, but those clients are not going to stick with you going, okay, well, I've waited 3 months. You haven't found me anything. I'm better off going somewhere else.
Yep.
I think it's a very, small loop there. People come in, use your service, but you can't actually get me what I want as part of that service. I'm going to leave. And so I think it's just going to be a rush towards who can deliver the service, who can find the right properties. And so I'm not really sure how quickly it happens, but you can see it now. Like, we have our sourcing team get poached or try and get poached all the time. They get messages and they send them to me. They're like, Ravi, this person hit me up. And I was like, I thought they were doing well. And it's you can see it. It's very evident that people are struggling on the sourcing side. I don't think they're going to have as much problem on the lead side, which, a couple of years ago was the main issue.
Yeah. It's interesting how that problem shifted.
Yeah.
It's a great observation. And getting back to sourcing, like, to me, that comes down at a foundational level, which is like real estate agent relationships. Because if you want to get something off market, you need to know the agent. They need to want to work with you exclusively, and that's a relationship. So I think it's going to boil down to who has the best real estate agent relationships wins.
100%. And you know this as well. You've been in property for a while. The relationships aren't built on one person winning all the time and at great levels. So if you've got mutuality in terms of the wins that we have, you're going to have a fruitful relationship. There's going to be times where a real estate agent needs help on a particular property, and you're going, this is perfect because I've got a client that exactly wants this. It might be the rundown property no one wants to touch, but it's perfect for that one client. And so I think what's going to happen is, if you do volume with clients or agents in this case, if you can do volumes with them, they keep coming back to you because less friction. Versus maybe some of the smaller guys will go in and they say, okay, well, I can deliver an amazing experience, but my agent relationship is based on one property, maybe two every 3 to 6 months. How do you compete with a numbers game?
Well, that's why I was saying to you earlier, like, that standard buyer who's just Johnny, he wants to go.
Of course.
Like, that's what I'm trying to work out. Like, how do they even compete? Because they've got multiple buyers agents with multiple relationships with that agent against you. It's fucking hard.
Yeah. The only way you get in is if you're willing to pay way above what it's actually worth. And I think that happens sometimes as well. You'll see someone as a cash buyer or someone who's just so frustrated after 6 months. They're like, I'm just going to do it myself. And they end up paying 30, 40K extra above what it's worth. And you're like, you could have just alleviated all of that stress, outsourced it for half the price that you ended up paying more on that property. You could have had someone on your side, someone who's good in strategy and actually bought that property for you, versus you just being, I guess, stubborn and saying, I'm going to do it myself. I don't care what it takes. I'm just going to buy.
How long have you been running your biz for, Search Property?
We just clocked over 5 years.
Fuck, congrats, man.
Thank you.
Congrats. You said you got 50 staff.
Yeah.
What are some of the big lessons you've learned over that time, like being a founder, running a successful, growing business?
People management is hard.
Yes, sir.
Outside of that, I think it's, if you can look at more of the long-term wins, you will win at the end of it. What I mean by that is, so many come into this thinking short-term. How do I just get my next deal? How do I secure the deal with an agent or a client, just get them over the line? And for me, it's always been built on free education, long-term. And I've had people that, have been following for a couple of years and only use my service 3 years later or 4 years later. And that's what I want to create, is I'm creating a feedback loop that's like years in the making, not, hey, how do we get them in like 2-3 months? I think the other part to me, or in our business, that's worked really well, and a key learning was, we went against the grain and didn't go do ads.
Yeah.
And we're about to kick off ads for the first time, which is going to be exciting because I have no idea what to expect. But we built it all organically. And when you build it organically, like, they're coming because you built the personal brand. And it's a lot harder now because there's more noise out there. But if you're that one particular person that does it well and you do it consistently, you're probably going to still make it. So outside of that, I think it's treating your employees the right way. When I hear at these interviews, when they get told they're not making X amount, they're not even at award wages, they don't have proper employment contracts, that stuff scares me. And for us, we're like, we need to be bulletproof when it comes to that sort of stuff. And at the end of the day, like, I'm not just taking the responsibility of 50 people. Those people have families. They might have parents that they, live with, and they have to contribute towards rent. And then they're trying to build out their future generation and their own wealth creation. So I feel a lot of responsibility, and I think people need to be asking themselves the question, are they okay to take on that responsibility? I'd never thought I was going to have a company that was going to be this big. And I have to have those health checks for myself. And I've got a core group of people that run their own businesses, and I can sit there and, okay, am I okay?
Yeah.
And if you're good, then you can go to the next level. But you need to figure out why you're even doing it. Don't fall for, Ravi's got to buy his agency with 50 staff. Let me go get 50 staff. It's like, don't worry about that.
You don't want that.
It's more headaches. You've got to have a really good purpose as to why you want to do it.
What's next for you? Like, are you just doubling down with where you're at now? Is there anything in the works?
Well, I spent probably the last 12 months, a big focus was the book. So Retire Filthy Rich with Real Estate. Became #1 bestseller, and it's been there for like 13 weeks, which is amazing. So a lot has gone into that. Outside of that, now it's looking at, okay, we've got a few other opportunities. I've invested into a couple of other businesses as well. So that happens on the side. But I think there's a big shift happening with the whole AI space. And so what we're doing is integrating a lot of that. And we've been integrating a lot of that into our core business. And so it's more like, okay, if I'm doubling down, it's not just doing the same stuff. I've got people in there that are really good at what they do. How do we enhance it? How do we get the tools, the best tools for them, so that we can make the best client experience? Because for us, we're playing, again, that long game.
Yes.
So for me, if it's cost me a lot up front, but I've got people for a lifetime and that purchase a few properties, and later if we have another business and it's associated with that, they're going to use that service as well. That to me is how we build wealth over 10, 15, 20 years. So I'm thinking long term. From a personal investing point of view, like I still, do Bitcoin, I still do real estate, but I'm not the guy that's going to have, I say that now, but who knows? But it doesn't excite me to go and have $100 million worth of real estate. I've got what I need as part of my foundation. Now I think I can get a better return in my business, but also the business does two things. I can make a lot of wealth, but I get to help so many people. If I just go buy more properties, I build my wealth, but I don't help anyone.
Yeah.
You can help tenants, and you can find people homes to live in. But I feel like that's my purpose, and so I don't think I'll ever stop creating content. If the buyer's agency is there tomorrow, it's not. The plan is for it to be a lifelong thing, but that's where my vision is.
Unreal. Ravi, enjoyed this chat, man.
Thank you for having me on, and I'm sure it's going to be the first of many chats.
Yeah, and congrats on all your success, dude.
Thanks, bro.
Cheers.